This Andrew Tate fan stabs his crush 7 times in a row to show masculinity. The story begins with Officer Luke and his colleague Sergeant Frank making preparations to arrest a murder suspect. Within a minute, Luke gets a radio call from his team to start the engine and follow their convoy. They cross a couple of blocks and break into the house with all the spec ops. They immediately pin down Manda Miller, her husband Eddie Miller, their daughter Lisa Miller, and then break into the bedroom of Jaime Miller. When Eddie was trying to confront, Luke threatens to detain Eddie if he doesn't stop resisting. He then tells Jaime to change his pants because certainly he was having a panic attack. The special police begin to check everything in the house for evidence, but they find nothing inside. Diaz Frank explains to Jaime's mom and dad that their son has been arrested in suspect of a murder and they will have to come to the station right now. The boy was pretending as if he has no idea exactly why he has been detained. This 10 minutes inside the van was the longest drive in his life. In the police station, the desk officer gets Jaime's full name and his entire medical history. He tells Jaime to not say anything about his crime because his testament can be used against him as an evidence in the court. Jaime pleads with the officer to assign his dad as the appropriate adult of him instead of any government employee. They put Jaime in the dry cell. Officer Luke goes to talk to Jaime's family in the waiting lounge. He tells Eddie that Jaime will stay in the dry cell for 24 hours before he is sent to a better detention center for the minors. He also warns Eddie to not hide anything from the investigators in case Jaime decides to share something with him. In the aftermath, a doctor was performing a basic psychological evaluation of Jaime before taking him to the diagnostic chamber. He was asked some basic questions like what does he think of some vocabularies like being arrested, being murdered, being called a suspect, definition of physical violence, mortality, and a few more. Jaime gives short answers to all of these questions in the presence of his father. This is Hall Barlow, the personal solicitor of Jaime Miller appointed by the government. He goes to see Jaime's parents and he tells them that he will do his best to ensure that Jaime doesn't get maltreated inside the detention center. He then goes to meet Luke and Frank to get a briefing on the murder case of Jaime Miller. In the meanwhile, the desk officer calls Eddie Miller to stay with Jaime during the blood sample test. They take his picture from all angles, his DNA sample, his fingerprints, and finally his blood sample. Jaime at first was feeling a bit anxiety because he was never good with needles. But he didn't have any other choice, did he? One of the staff members tells Eddie that Jaime has to strip off all of his clothes for a close-up checking in case he might be hiding something dangerous inside his body. This is when Eddie argues with the staff members that Jaime is only 13 years old and they cannot inspect the naked skin of a minor. Jaime then tells his father that he is okay with that. Everyone turns around and Jaime strips off for the close checkup. They take the current clothes of Jaime as a form of evidence and give him a new set of clothes. Private solicitor Hall Barlow in the aftermath takes Jaime and his father to a private room for asking Jaime some personal questions to learn a bit more about him. During the conversation, he avoided asking Jaime anything about the murder. In the end, he tells Jaime to not say anything about where he was last night and dodge every single question related to the events of that murder. While leaving the room, he tells Eddie that it's normal to feel shocked after what happened to his son and he should remember anything Jaime tells him personally before the final confession. Eddie then goes inside to tell Jaime that everything will be okay, but this old man had zero idea of what he was about to witness with his own eyes. In the interrogation chamber, Officer Luke shows the photographs of some bikini models that were found on the Instagram page of Jaime Miller. Can you imagine the level of embarrassment his father Eddie was feeling that time? Jesus bloody Christ. Luke also gets to know about 2 more suspects named Tommy and Ryan who are also a very close friend of Jaime. Sergeant Frank then asks Jaime about Kate Leonard. She is the murder victim who was stabbed 7 times in a row with a kitchen knife into the chest near a parking lot. This is when Officer Luke throws the biggest shock bomb on the table. He shows a couple of CCTV screenshots of Jaime following Katie after 9 p.m. at night and then asks what was going on between him and Katie. But as usual, Jaime says that he has got no comment on that, but Luke was not satisfied with the answer. He pulls out a video from a local CCTV camera of the parking lot which was directly working as a visual evidence that Jaime was the one with the knife in his hand stabbing Katie after a serious confrontation. After being exposed, Jaime breaks into tears. Everyone decides to leave them alone for a while to let them digest the entire event. Eddie also breaks into tears understanding that his son's life is now ruined. He could have managed to get himself together to believe believe that his 13-year-old son just committed a murder in such a heinous way. The next morning, Frank and Luke go to meet Mrs. Fenimore, one of the school teachers of Katie. She introduces Jade, the best friend of Katie, who has agreed to sit on an interview with the investigators. During the interrogation, she tells Luke that Katie used to hate Jaime and she always tried to avoid him. She calls Jaime a creep and walks away from the room, not being able to handle any more questions about her best friend. They decide to leave the girl alone. When they were walking outside, Frank complains that the school was smelling like an awkward combination of vomit, cabbage, and masturbation. Luke then laughs about it and says that they have to continue their investigation in the school until they find a clue on the knife that was used for the murder. During the PT class, Jade lashes at Ryan, throwing a punch on his face and stomping him non-stop on the ground. He is the best friend of Jaime and she thinks that Ryan has helped Jaime in the murder. The teacher manages to calm down the situation and one of them takes Ryan to the first aid room. This is where Frank and Luke also come in to interrogate Ryan about the incident. At first, he tries to comfort Ryan through gossiping before moving on to the hard questions. As soon as Ryan gets asked about the knife, he proceeds to walk away. This is Adam, the only son of Officer Luke, and he also studies over here. He comes to his dad to tell something about Jaime and Ryan before they were about to leave for the police station. He tells his father about the things he saw on the Instagram account of Jaime and Ryan. He talks about the photos of blue pills and red pills from the Matrix, the true definition of masculinity from Andrew Tate, and the 80-20 principle. According to Andrew Tate and some other masculinity influencers, 80% men are attracted to the top 20% women. So, men have to use intimidating tricks to get their ideal girl. He also gets to find out that Katie used to bully Jaime all the time by calling him an incel. Jaime used to believe that it is okay for men to beat their woman into submission because that's what Andrew Tate has indoctrinated them into believing. Adam then goes back to his class and Luke takes a walk outside with Sergeant Frank. When asked about Adam, Luke reveals that he is not in good terms with his son nowadays. But he has been trying hard to reconcile with his son again. This is when Frank says something unexpected. She finds it utterly disturbing that everyone is going to remember Jaime as the offender in this incident, but no one will recognize Katie at the same level despite this girl taking the biggest damage. Luke didn't know how to respond to the claim Frank just made because she was absolutely right about everything. Before leaving the school, they decide to meet Ryan again for the last time. As soon as Ryan gets to notice Luke entering the room, he runs away through the glass door. After running for 2 minutes, Luke manages to catch Ryan. He gets to find out that the knife they were looking for belongs to Ryan, and he knew about the murder that night. Ryan gets immediately arrested for further investigation and he tells Frank to escort Ryan to the police station. He then walks back to the school gate to pick up Adam. The both were feeling hungry and decide to leave for the local fast food shop. It's been a long since they talked to each other with that kind of warmth. Eddie, on the other hand, goes to the parking lot with a bouquet in his hand where Katie was stabbed to death. This is Brinoy Ariston, the clinical psychologist of Jaime. She tells the security guard of Jaime's cell to open the door of Jaime so that she can talk to him for the confession. This man behaves like a creep and a pimp at the same time while looking like he just survived a nuclear radiation. Brinoy gives Jaime a cup of hot chocolate with extra marshmallows and sandwich stuffed with cheese and pickle. She gossips a lot with Jaime to make him feel comfortable until she jumps to the hard stuff. She asks Jaime about what he thinks on masculinity, sexual attraction towards women, and why he thinks that beating women into submission is a masculine thing. He gets pissed and starts screaming at Brinoy at the top of his lungs. She goes outside to take a breather and comes back to try again. She tells Jaime that she is not his enemy and she just wants to know about Jaime's understanding on different topics. She asks again what he thinks about women, what is true love, what is sexual attraction, what is good touch, and what is bad touch. The boy surprisingly says that touching the private parts of his female classmates at this age seems normal to him. Jesus fucking Christ. He also comments on Katie, saying that Katie was a flat girl. When Brinoy begins to gaslight him into confessing more information, Jaime freaks out again. After the security guard warns him to calm down, he decides to sit back on the chair. And then he gives a shocking revelation. He used to be part of a Facebook group that claimed to spread real truth about dark human psychology. That group actually belonged to the devotees of people like Andrew Tate. This is where he got indoctrinated into believing that men should use the combination of intimidation and lust to attract women. Despite showing pictures, he was still refusing to accept his direct involvement with Katie's murder. He further claims that Katie used to bully him all the time, and after 5 more minutes of constant constant gaslighting, Jamie admits his crime of stabbing Katie that night out of anger. Brinoy then says goodbye to Jamie, saying that it was the last session between them. She was kind of devastated on the fact that she had to see a 13-year-old boy confessing a brutal murder right in front of her. But she gotta do what she gotta do. 7 months have been passed. It was the birthday of Eddie. The family was trying to get over the horrors Jamie brought upon them. Jamie has sent his birthday wish to his dad from the detention center. All of a sudden, Lisa comes back to the kitchen and tells Eddie to check outside. Eddie then gets to find out his van painted with the word "Nonce" on the side of the window. It was not the first time the family was targeted in the neighborhood ever since Jamie was convicted of murder. He then goes outside to take the bucket and tries to clean the paint off the van. This is when those two kids who did all of this passes in front of their home saying the word "nonce" again and again. The old man gets disappointed at this behavior. The fact that the paint was not getting off works as the last nail on the coffin. He takes his daughter and wife, gets in the car, and goes to the local store to get a paint remover. On their way to the shop, Eddie talks about how he met Manda, how they fell in love, and how Manda was always the shy girl. Eddie also talks about how he used to flirt with Manda, where they used to go on Valentine's Day, and many more about their personal and love life. After 10 minutes of driving, they reach the local store. After searching for a bit, Eddie realizes that he doesn't have enough money to buy the stuff he has been looking for, so he asks the staff member to give him a blue paint for coloring his van. Inside the store, he gets to hear other gossiping about Jaime Miller. The people in the neighborhood still haven't forgot about the murder case. Feeling uncomfortable, Eddie walks outside faster. This is when he gets to find out those two kids following and secretly taking pictures of his family. He grabs one of them by the collar and threatens to never stare at his family ever again. He then walks back to the van. Out of anger and disappointment, he throws the paint on the vehicle and drives away from that place with his family. On the drive back to home, Jamie gives them a phone call from the detention center to say happy birthday to his dad. His big sister Lisa was crying all the time while Jamie was on the line. Jamie says goodbye and hangs the phone call after talking to his mom and sister. Manda walks inside the home and breaks into tears. Mom and dad begin to talk about the lovely childhood of Jamie and how adorable he was as a kid. Manda still doesn't believe that Jamie is a murderer. Eddie loses it and begins to reveal that the investigators found out porn videos, sexually provocative pictures of women on Jamie's hard drive, and his search history is full of videos and pages that support toxic masculinity. He also tells Manda that when he was of Jamie's age, his father used to whack him with a belt every time he was in one of his foul moods. And for that reason, he promised to himself that when he becomes a father, he will not let his own child suffer from the same abuse he had to go through. He always wanted to be a good dad, but right now, he just feels like a complete failure. Lisa comes back after dressing up. They're supposed to go to watch pictures together. Eddie tells both of them to set the table for breakfast and wait for him downstairs. He then goes into Jamie's bedroom. He kisses the top of Jamie's teddy bear and puts it to sleep while crying at the level of breathing. And that was the end of the story with too many questions left unanswered.